Hello again. Welcome to another episode of Leading from Alignment with our good friend, coach, mentor, John Opolewski. How are you, John?
Jim, I'm really good. I'm excited to be with you today recording.
Right on. So this is episode 234. You believe that?
I can't believe it.
234 episodes. It's
We're
crazy.
going on
Yeah.
it'll be 5 years in August that we've been
Yeah.
podcasting. Yeah.
It's funny. Today's topic is about saying no. And I wonder in 234 episodes, how many things you've said no to so that you can just to have recorded 234, let alone to have something to say, that's meaningful to the audience in 234 different
Yeah.
podcasts. It's you really have to shut yourself off sometimes away from things, say no to things to have something to say that's worth listening to for 234. That's hundreds of hours of content. It's probably took thousands of hours of learning. So I celebrate that with you, John. God bless you,
Yeah.
man. Thanks for being who you are in the body of Christ. Why don't you tell us
Well,
more about episode 234?
yeah, let me just say thanks to you, Jim, for being along for all 234 of these. Uh,
Yeah,
and that's been, first of all, there's no way we'd be at 234 without you. And we wouldn't be at 234 without both of us saying no to some things.
yeah,
And really, today is kind of a follow-up on last week's episode 233. We spent some time working through what I learned on vacation, a couple of
yeah,
key things, and the last thing we talked about in 233 was time and how valuable that asset is
yeah,
to us. And as a matter of fact, outside of our walk with Jesus, our marriage, and some of our key human relationships, time is our most
mm,
valuable asset. And I think last week we talked about understanding the value of time had to do with determining what and who we say yes or no to. And I think saying yes or no thoughtfully, I mean, there's a per aspect to it, Jim, but I also think there is an understanding aspect, and it's understanding our capacity.
yeah,
Um, I was having coffee with a staff pastor at a large church a while back, and he was telling me about these disruptions. Like he was giving me kind of like, here's my
mm,
day, you
yeah,
know,
yeah,
and it was filled with unscheduled people dropping in, walk-ins, people asking for money, or I'm having a crisis. And,
yeah.
I said, well, what's your next day look like? He said, pretty much like I just described to you. And he was
Wow.
feeling frustrated about how much of his time was being consumed by unplanned happenings. And
Yeah,
and as a pastor, you can't totally eliminate that, right? I mean,
sure.
that's just the way of the world. But here's the thought that occurred to me is that it is so easy to lose a clear sense of our capacity and we say yes to things we don't have capacity for sometimes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I think the question I'd like us to kind of grapple with today is how do we as leaders determine what our capacity actually is?
Okay. Yeah,
How do we know if we're overcommitting?
right.
How do we may be undercommitting, like some of us
Yeah,
may have excess capacity that, and we're not saying yes enough.
right.
And some of us are saying yes too much. So
Yeah.
is that okay? Does that sound like a good plan?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, go for it.
All right. So how does a leader determine what their capacity is? Here's
Yeah.
here's one thought. Understand you don't have an unlimited supply.
Step one.
Let's start there.
Yeah, yeah,
That you have a finite amount of capacity,
right.
and be honest with that. Excuse me. Uh, and I can hear. I've heard in my head. I hear these responses to that reverberating because I've heard these actual responses from people. Here's the one I hear the most. The Bible says I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Oh, come on.
No, I'm serious.
Oh,
And
okay.
so in a very
Yeah,
nice way, I try to say, the context, what's the context of that scripture?
right. Yeah,
And it's about learning how to be content in good
yeah,
times and bad times. So that verse is
mm,
wrapped around both in front and in back with
Yeah.
multiple verses about Paul telling us about here's how I've learned to be content in any and every situation. It has nothing to do with denying the limitations that Jesus created us with.
Yeah. Wow. It's funny. Sometimes theology is so bad theology is so illogical that we should see that's not a good point. That I can do all things like, well, then stand for the next 7 days without sleep. Let's see it. Let's just test it. Like there's obvious limitations and they're God given limitations because
Yes.
if we were utterly limitless, we wouldn't need them for anything. So
Yeah.
that
Well,
that's a
that's such a good point.
that's
Yeah.
such a that's such a silly statement.
Well, yeah, silly or I kind of think it is too, but this is
Yeah.
some of the objections that we get. Um,
Yeah.
so because we don't have an unlimited supply of capacity, Jim, we have to learn to say no to some things so we can say yes to the most important things.
Yes. There it is. Yeah. That's it.
Because not everything that presents itself to me, as a pastor, many of the things that present themselves to me are urgent, but they're not necessarily important.
Yeah.
And the
Mm.
urgent can crowd out the important.
Yes.
And so I never get around to the important stuff. I live my life at the mercy of the firefighting
Yeah.
mentality.
Yeah.
And I get to the end of my life and I look back and say, Dad, did I actually accomplish what God put me on
Right.
planet Earth to do?
Right.
So you don't have an unlimited supply. Um, Here's the next question around capacity. And we talked a little bit about this in 233. How do I add the most value to this organization? That that will help us know where to put energy, right?
Right.
So I think that firefighting as a leadership style can be can be addicting, Jim.
Yeah.
It can be
I'm needed.
intoxicating.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm needed, I'm solving problems, I'm knocking items off my to-do list, I'm running on
Yeah.
adrenaline. And I think that the reactive mode brings a short-term sense of accomplishment, but if I live there, it kills capacity.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I think, how do I get my arms around capacity? I ask myself some really hard questions. One,
Yeah.
why did God put me on planet Earth?
Yeah.
Why? Why am I here? What's my Ephesians 2:10?
Yeah.
What are the good works you created in advance for me to do?
Yeah.
What is my unique contribution to the organization I'm leading? When we
Yeah.
started Converge Coaching 11 years ago, my unique contribution was doing everything
Yeah. Yeah.
because I was a one-man shop.
It was your job. Yeah.
Now we have 25 people on our team.
Yes. Yeah.
The answer to that question has shifted and morphed over the last 11 years.
Yeah.
Um, Here's another question I think would be great for us to ask. Now, this is not on your day off. This is on a work
Yeah.
day. Am I doing something important today?
Mm.
Or am I just working on whatever screams the loudest?
Yeah. Yeah.
Here's one more. Uh, what do I need to strategically quit doing? Now, you might need a
Hmm.
coach for that one. You might need
Yeah.
a sounding board
Yeah.
to help you with that and unpacking that. Jim, give me some thoughts on this second bullet here.
That last one you just said, like what is it that I can do? What is it that only I should do? And then everything else, over a period of time, delegating those tasks to other people. I don't know why we don't do that, but you do need a coach. I'm just going to say it. You do need a coach, a mentor, a tour mentor to help you
Mm.
through that. Even Moses, he's a great man, but if it wasn't for his father-in-law, he everything was still his to-do list. And his father-in-law said, "That's not the way you do it." And
Yeah.
I don't know why we need someone else with a different set of eyes to show us what everybody can see clearly, and that is you You are not the creator and sustainer of the universe. You have a role to play,
Right.
but you need to get rid of it. So when I do a I talk to somebody like it's in business leadership, they're an entrepreneur. The very first exercise to help them through burnout is have them write over and over, just this is what I do, this is my responsibility. We'll fill up a whole dry erase board with their responsibility. And they'll say, now, starting with the most important, start to circle like the most important things that you do, only you can do. It's vital that you do them. And they'll start to circle those things just little by little. When they're about 20% of the way in, I'll stop them and I'll say, okay, everything you haven't circled over the next year, it's my job to help you delegate those things. So the first things that you circled, those are the only things you do 12 months from now. And if that were true, if I could lead you there, would you want to do it? And universally they say it's impossible, it's not going to happen. Like I know, but if I gave you a money back guarantee, which I won't do because it's up to them to do it, but a money back guarantee, would you do it? And the answer is always yes. They wish that was their life, and they
That's
find
right.
quickly we find the lowest hanging fruit, the return phone call, the scheduling thing, the who pays the bills, who makes sure that the people did what they're supposed to do. Those are really
Right.
easily delegated things, and their life becomes far more focused, far more productive very quickly. But I'm with you, John. I'm going to say a resounding: you will not do this without an outside set of eyes pointing out to you. And by the way, I help people do this, and I have people that have to help me do this. I know
I'm
exactly what I would ask that person,
100% right.
people to ask me those questions, and the questions I wouldn't ask myself, because I think I'm the exception to my rules because I know these things. It's not, I
Yeah.
get it, but I need someone to
Yeah.
stop me and say, oh, that's not what you do. So
Right.
and my wife does that for me. She once a month, we get in my office right here, you can't see it, but there's a sticky note that has no more than 6 things on it that I'm personally responsible for in the next month, and that's it. and
Right.
and once it's 7, that's too many. She knows my tolerances. So I'll say, well, 6.2, 6.8, 6 point, no, Jim, no more than 6, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. We all need accountability, or we will mission creep into everything being a responsibility
That's right.
consistently.
That's
Yeah.
right. So saying no, it's what we're not encouraging you to do is to just say unilaterally no to everything, of course, right?
Right.
We're not saying
Right.
that.
Right.
We want you to
Yeah.
be wise and
Yeah.
prayerful about it. And part of being wise is realizing I don't have unlimited capacity. Secondly, how do I take that limited capacity and add the most value? And then thirdly, how do I actually kind of get good at saying no?
Yeah.
And so I'd like to talk about that as we kind of get towards the end of this one. I actually have two things I think will help us say no better.
Okay.
And one is to develop a to-do list that's centered around our assignment.
Yes. Proactive versus
Yeah,
reactive. Yep.
that's
Yep.
right. So not everything you're going to have to do as a leader is assignment focused. Let me just state
Yeah.
that.
Sure.
Some tasks are just maintenance related, right? I don't like doing paperwork.
Yeah.
I really don't, but I have to do some paperwork.
Yeah.
Um, Email is a lost cause for me. Um, I'm never caught up with my email. I'm never caught
Yeah.
up. And it's terrible. I try to
Yeah.
get to the what I think are the most critical emails, and then,
Yeah.
some people languish for a long time, and I feel terrible about that. Um,
Mm.
but I have a strategy for making sure I work on the things that add the most value to people and value to
Yep.
our team and value to our clients. Um, so I use two things, Jim. I have a whiteboard off to my right here
Yep.
in my office, and in that whiteboard, I have it split up into 4 quadrants. I'm just going to share real quick. One
Yeah.
quadrant is our core values, our 4 core values as a company,
Yeah.
because I want to remember how I'm supposed to behave while I'm serving the Lord and serving my team, right? I want to
Yeah. Yeah.
remember the things that are important to us behaviorally. Another quadrant is my dream quadrant, and that's where I put our long range, big picture items in there. That you could call it your vision quadrant, whatever you'd want to call it.
Yeah.
And then below, I have a current quarter quadrant. So when this comes out, I think it'll be Q2. So I have quarter two, and I have about 6 or 7 projects that we're working on. Uh, no more than that. And then the other quadrant is the upcoming quarter. And I start thinking
Right.
about, okay, what's going to be important in in that next 3 months period. And that's kind of like a little bit of a holding tank for me. And
Right.
so my whiteboard, nothing goes on there like go to Meyer and buy a gallon of milk. That doesn't get
Right.
on the
Right.
whiteboard.
No, no.
Make a phone call to so and so. That doesn't really go on the whiteboard. These are like
Right.
project-based things on there. And so that kind of keeps me grounded, Jim, on the large stuff.
Yes.
And then I sit down on Saturday morning and I plan my upcoming week, and I use the whiteboard as my guiding force. What am I going to work on next week? Now, not everything I do during a week is connected to that whiteboard. But if nothing's connected to that whiteboard,
Right. Yeah.
what in the world am I doing? Right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so it's a really simple system. It's absolutely free, doesn't cost you a dime to implement it. Um, and I've been using that system for 11 years. And it
Yeah.
has helped me, Jim, get better at saying yes
Right.
and no.
Yeah.
So developing some sort of work strategy, and I use a two-piece, I use the whiteboard and a weekly to-do list.
Yeah.
Figure out what works for you, but
Yeah. Yeah.
something that keeps your eye on the ball, keeps your eye on the
Yeah.
goal line, the end zone.
Yeah.
Because if I don't do that, I'll get buried in all of the basic blocking and tackling, and I
Yeah.
won't add value to you, to the rest of the team, to our clients. What do you
I
think
think
about
too.
that?
I think too, John, that let's say you have 100 things you have to do this week. If you look at 100 things on a to-do list, it's overwhelming. You're
Yeah,
behind the eight ball. But if you say I need to do, 15 things a day, that and you split those up into priority, and what you do best on Mondays may be different than what you do best on Thursday. You find the best time to put certain energies into certain projects. You find the best
yeah,
rhythm of your hours that you're most successful at creating things versus reacting to things. You stick to it. It's funny. We understand diets, we understand calendars, we understand budgets. But when we get to do lists, all of a sudden we think we can break all the laws of nature and
yeah,
have far more things, or be overwhelmed by a reasonable amount of things. But we say this has to be done this week. Well, don't do this week. Do this day. Do this half a day, this quarter of a
yeah,
day, and break it up into logical, strategic things. And say, well, I don't have time. If I don't have time to do my list, I don't have the time to do that. I would say just the opposite. If you don't take time to organize, prepare, and prioritize, you
yeah.
you will always feel overwhelmed by a manageable number of things potentially.
That's right.
So why
That's right.
bring why allow chaos and reactivity when there's order and proactivity? If you are constantly putting out forest fires, and God created you to plant new trees, there's some things you can do to to
That's
to
right.
not allow forest fires to happen, or to manage forest fires in the sense that I deal with forest fires between 1 and 2 p.m. My voicemail does this.
Yeah.
No one knows my cell phone number anymore, but because I had 100 and some calls during dinner one night, I said, "That's it. Too many people know my phone number." So what I said was, I return phone calls at 11:30 and 4:30, 11:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m. So
There you
if you
go.
call, I'm working, I'm being productive. I'll return if it fits into the day, I'll return it somewhere between 11:30 and 12, somewhere between 4:30 and 5. Thanks for calling.
I
God
love it.
bless you. Yeah, and that's an expectation. I'm not going to call you right back. I won't even listen to your message till 11:30, and then it has to be one that's important enough
Yeah.
to be returned, and it may not happen until the 4:30
Quick
time
question
slot.
for you. Quick
Yeah,
question for you on that, Jim. How many people have been upset with you because you set it up like that?
nobody. I can't think of anybody.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, through the years, I don't recall anybody saying, hey, my, grandma was dying. You needed to come right now, and you didn't answer. I created the ex. I'm not checking my phone every time somebody calls. I'm creating something right now. I
Yeah.
guess there's other ways too, though. They could have called the church, gotten a hold of a secretary. Hey, this is an emergency. Grandma's dying. Can you tell Pastor
Right.
Jim? So there's
Yeah.
other ways. That may have even been in that. If it's a real emergency,
Right.
then please contact. But then even then, the people that they could contact knew the difference between a real emergency And
right.
I just really need to talk to Pastor Jim right now. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, no, you don't.
No,
You can wait all
that's so
30.
good.
Yeah,
And that's such a helpful example. Let me get to this second piece about
yeah,
getting more comfortable saying no. I think having a sense of priority in your week actually
yeah,
liberates you in terms of saying yes and no to certain things. But here's the second piece, and this one's a little harder, and that's dealing wisely with people.
yes,
You know, if you're a pastor or a ministry leader, people are a huge part of your assignment.
yeah,
They are. You know, if you don't like people, the ministry is not for you. It's just,
yeah.
it, go
Yeah,
be a computer programmer, be a coder,
right.
do
Yeah,
something where you don't have to interact with human
yeah,
beings. Um, but that being said, it's quite possible the wrong people are monopolizing your capacity.
yeah,
Who are the wrong people, you may ask?
yes,
I think those who have zero interest in growing,
yes.
they may be the wrong people.
Yep.
Uh, Zero interest in changing, zero interest in contributing their time, their talent, their treasure.
Yeah,
People who seek an audience with you because of your role, because of
right.
your influence. They're not there to learn. They're not there to grow. They're not there to, they're not there because they really want your help. And, God forbid,
Yeah,
do people like that go to church? Yes,
sure. Oh, yeah, yeah,
they do. And thank the Lord, not all of them are like that, but there are people
yeah,
like that. There, and I think they might even be the minority of people, but they require, if you allow them, they require a disproportionate amount of your capacity.
yes,
And so I think one of the biggest mistakes, you talk about what would you do differently now than when you
yeah.
were a young guy. Here's one thing I would do differently. I was spending, as a 29-year-old lead pastor, I was spending way too much time, way too much of my capacity trying to get unfaithful followers faithful
Yeah,
and spending way too little of my capacity working with those who are already faithful and
right.
on board.
Yeah,
Um, be wise about who you spend your time and your capacity with.
yes,
Um, it's such an important part of saying
yeah,
no. That doesn't mean that we discriminate. It doesn't mean that, hey, people have to be a certain level for us to even have a conversation with them. I'm not
yeah,
saying that, but be
right.
smart.
Yeah.
I worked with a guy once, Jim, who told me, he said that I actually, Laura and I went and did a whole weekend, mental and emotional health workshop for an entire weekend at this person's church. We stayed at their home
Uh-huh.
for the weekend, and one of the mornings I get up and I'm having coffee, and the pastor walks in and he looks like he'd been run over by a truck. And I said, "What happened to you?" And he said, "Well, I got a call at 11 o'clock last night from somebody that needed me to come pick him up at the hospital." Well, the hospital was an hour and a half away.
Oh my goodness.
And he got home, 3 in the morning. And I said,
Yeah.
"Well, who is this person?" And he said, "Well, she calls me every day at 9 o'clock and we talk for an hour." I'm not exaggerating. And I said, "Why are
Wow.
you doing that?" He said, "Because I'm trying to be a good pastor." He said, "Let me ask you this. How long has this been going on?" He said, "For a year." For a year. It's been going on for a year. And I said, "Is she better now than a year ago?" He says, "No, actually, she's worse."
It's worse. Yeah, I do that one. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
said, "What are you doing? You are not helping her. How many people are you ignoring
Yeah.
who are serious about growing, who are serious about finding out why God's put them on planet Earth?"
Yeah.
And so capacity. Second Chronicles 23:6 says this, all all the men are to guard what the Lord has assigned to them.
Right. Mm.
And Paul said at the end of his life, I've finished my race.
Right.
So here's the deal. Saying no means understanding that God won't hold me accountable for what he hasn't assigned to me. So if that's true, I have to guard what he has assigned to me.
Yeah.
And that means I'm going to have to be wise with people.
Yeah.
So, so what do you think about that last one there, Jim?
I'm laughing because you know, as you're saying, it's like, oh, I know that person. Oh, I know that person. I know that. They are attracted to people who will listen. They,
Mm.
and I don't mean to say this in an unkind way, but there are emotional black holes in the universe that no matter what you put into them, they will not be satisfied. They will not be filled. I'll take a step further. And the day you do create a boundary, they'll probably blame you for all their problems. And then they'll
Hmm.
leave and go to another church to tell that pastor what a bad pastor you were. I'm not saying that's why we should get rid of them, but I think what we're talking about here, John, is just boundaries. Like you're saying, I will meet with you once a week, but I can't talk to you every day at 9 o'clock. Oh, you don't have a ride from the hospital? My phone goes off when I spend family time. It doesn't come on again until the following morning. So I didn't even get your call until the following morning.
Yeah.
Those are pretty simple boundaries. And again, on our voicemails, on our automatic text responses, through our stories, people realize I'm prioritizing my time with God, my time with my family, so that I can be a good pastor.
Yeah.
So if I can't go to dinner with everybody, there will be a time when I can't go to dinner almost with anybody because to have access, I remember my pastor saying that in Phoenix. I'm like, oh, that doesn't seem right. But there were 13,000 people at the church at that time. Literally, there was 13,000 people. So he couldn't go to dinner with everybody. And I thought, well, he should go to dinner with somebody. I want him to have friends. As it turns out, he did. He didn't mean that. But people say, oh, you're my pastor. I want to buy you lunch sometime. That expectation. He's like, I can't go to lunch with everybody. So I'm not going to go to lunch with just anybody who wants to have lunch. So by if again these were dollars, we would know not to invest in something that has no return. So hours, as we've already said, are far more precious than dollars.
That's
And
right.
we get a new stipend every 24 hours. We get another 24
Hmm.
hours, so we treat them a little bit carelessly. But I love what you're saying because it just brings back to why would I put 80% of my energy into the 3% of the people that cause 80% of the problems? When I can put 80% of my energy into the 10% of the people that will become the foundation of a growing ministry. I would
Right.
rather plant new trees, understanding that forest fires eventually burn themselves out. And I get it. Like that person's attached to that person and they've been here a long time. And I don't know. One of the things that's helped me, and I've said it many times on the podcast, is when people have demands that are greater than my capacity, I say, listen, you are absolutely right to assume that I am your servant, but please don't be confused that makes you my master. I have another master. I have to account to him for my time, for my heart, for my energy, for my investment. I
Right.
cannot give you in abundance what I should be giving to a wider variety of people. So that's not saying I don't love you. It's saying, hey, let's talk once a week at 9 o'clock. I think that's a very generous statement. And whether she stays or goes
Right.
but to put hundreds of hours
Literally hundreds of hours.
into a black hole, you just go, what are you thinking? you know,
Yeah.
it's
And
frustrating
and
because
God,
you've had those.
yeah, and God love him. This guy was a great guy. He is a
Just fun.
great guy, but he didn't
Yeah.
know that he had permission
Yes. That's a good word. Permission.
to say, "Hey, I got some capacity
Yeah.
limitations here." And
Yeah.
so Jim, that's really what I wanted to. Hopefully, we helped those of you who are listening and watching today. We don't want you to be a bully. We don't want you to be a doormat either,
Right.
because both of those styles will cause a tremendous amount of pain for
Yeah.
you and those you lead. We want you to find that happy middle ground where you know
Yeah.
when to say yes, when to say no, when to say not now,
Yeah.
maybe later, um, so that you can get more comfortable with saying that little two-letter word,
Yeah.
No. So that's what I
Yeah.
got today, Jim.
I love it. One last story, John, that I thought of was the man who discipled me, Carmen Balsamo. We had 30 students in the Master's Commission program, one pastor, and we're all growing. We're all dealing with our entire lives because we finally have an environment we can do that. And he taught us this. He said, if my office door is open, it's open to you. Come in, shut the door, sit down. I'm your pastor. If the office door is closed or I'm not in the office, I promise you, God is trying to teach you how to hear his voice. And that'll be more important in the long run than you hearing my voice. So he will make me available to you when you truly need a pastor. But in the meantime, he wants to be your father. And I think even creating that, there's times when I work, there's times when I return phone calls, there's times my phone goes off. And I promise you that if I'm not available, God still is. Those are good things to teach people. Those are good things for them to know because we're not permanent fixtures in anybody's life. And
Right.
he is. So God bless you, John. This is beautiful. Thanks for the wisdom. Again, you should go on vacations regularly because you come back with gold. So
I'll tell
I
Laura
want, yeah.
you said that.
She'll vote in favor. Yeah. So I would just say this, guys. You're going to need help. We've already said it. You cannot see your life for what it is because the reason the way it is because you've seen it through a different set of eyes. You need third party. You need second voices. You need other tests than the ones we all do. I do. John does. Converge is here to help you with that. We can serve you in any way. Convergecoach.com. Start the conversation. Click the link. A half hour. We'll just talk about it. And if there's more that's needed, we'll help you with the more. If that's all that's needed, then you got your money's worth out of it, didn't you? Because it was free. So God bless you. Make good decisions. Eternity is a long time. God's counting on us to be faithful to him and create good boundaries. So keep going, guys. We love you, praying for you as you continue to lead for more.